Welcome back to my garden. Certainly has been a while. The year's kind of unravelled in a nice way. Visits from friends, lots of art events, so all good stuff, and videos have taken a bit of a backseat. But I thought I'd stick with tradition, and tradition it is. 365 days on from last year's New Year's Eve video. Here we are, more or less the same spot. Same beautiful red blossom tree in the background, the same squeaking windmill next to me. I'm even wearing the same shirt, pure as coincidence. But I rewatched the last year's video. I've been posting on Facebook, and by chance this was next up in the cycle, so it's the same shirt. What has changed? What is going to change? It's the topic. Last year I was speaking about ideas provoked by rereading Viktor Frankl's epic, iconic, essential work, Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm going to be talking about something equally essential, drinking. In particular, why we drink, staying with tradition. It certainly has been a tradition with me, this whole business of drinking. Family folklore has it that when I was round about 3 or 4 at a friend, the family's wedding, no one could find me. I'd wandered off. It was time to go, and my parents were wondering what happened to their hyperactive toddler. And their friend said, "Haven't you seen?" They didn't know what they were supposed to have seen or what they'd missed. Turns out I'd been going from table to table with the immortal words, "sippers," and people were giving me a little sip of their drink. And I'd had the works, whiskey, wine, beer, you name it, gin. Apparently I slept well that night, as one would at 4. Don't know how true all of it is or how much I actually had to drink. But from that day on, it seemed like sippers and me were made to be together like jam and toast. And even as a young boy, I remember enjoying beer. I liked having a sip of my dad's beer. So why do I drink? Well, I like the flavour. I like the taste of it. But I don't think that's really the answer, and it's not what I'm asking. Why do we drink? I don't mean the occasional glass of wine with a nice meal or something like that. I'm talking about New Year's Eve drinking. Epic, proportional, sort of going all in drinking. Why do we do that? And I got to thinking about it. I do that a lot less. I can't anymore. That's the truth of the matter. Things started to slow down in the quarantine. I've had my problems with gout. And I just started drinking less. The first 8 months of quarantine, I had precisely 8 beers. And kind of, it's something where you lose the habit, and frankly it becomes very difficult to drink what I used to drink. So now a couple of beers and that's just about it. I might have a few more on a wild night, but it's all very much within health and safety limits and guidelines. But I have been thinking why I really got into drinking, and men in general, and this is a man thing, not exclusively, but I think this is very much a man thing, the sort of excessive macho drinking. Why do we do it? And I wanted to come up with a neat sort of tie it all up answer that would cover lots of different reasons. I guess the conclusion I've reached is that it is the easiest way to solve a lot of big problems that we face at different points, starting early on in our lives. I say solve. We don't solve the problems. We postpone the problems. But perhaps I need to flesh out the details, and you'll see what I mean. At the very beginning, I think one of the reasons us lads start drinking is The problem is we want to be a man. We want to be grown up. And that's what grown-ups do. They drink. So we drink as boys. And for a brief moment while we're drinking, we feel like we are. We pretend we are men. But of course we're not. All the things necessary to make us men, both actions and of course the obvious point, passage of time, all of these things are slowly gained, slowly won. They are not solved overnight by downing a bottle or two, be it of beer, wine, or something stronger. So we want to grow up. We want to be an adult. We do the adult thing, and we pretend for a while. And of course then we revert back to being a boy again. And the next event that comes around, well, we have to pretend all over again. And I think this is a cycle that is true for many people when they examine why they started drinking. Another reason might be that you are shy, or perhaps you feel you're boring. And when you drink, you are suddenly able to overcome all those inhibitions and talk to anybody. Or when you drink, at least on the inside, you feel like you're an extraordinarily fascinating person. But that shy you is still you. That self-perceived boring you, well, you haven't changed just because you had a couple of beers or whatever. And the cycle carries on. Eventually you start working and you want to fit in, and a nice way of making friends, working or studying, going to university, a new job. You go out, you socialise, you have a few drinks, you let your hair down, you make new friends. Or a bit later on in the work cycle, you slowly come to the conclusion that your job is tedious beyond all belief, depressing even, that your life is actually a bit of a mess, the relationships you found yourself in, and drinking is an escape, a way to forget all that, release. So it's a lot easier to solve the problem of a boring or frustrating life by having a few drinks with the pals, shouting on your local team, than it is to actually change your life and make it a better one, or fix the problems in your relationships. So you drink, and the problems go away magically, and then as no sooner have they gone than the next day they're back again. The only difference being that you're now hungover and it all looks a little bit grim and depressing. Now, I'm painting a bleak picture. And I have no regrets, actually, of how I've lived my life. I've had a great life. I have no regrets about wild parties, about going out with my pals, about drunken tomfoolery. Of course, I've done my share of embarrassing things, and it would have been nice if I hadn't. And there's a whole bunch of things that I wish I hadn't done, I could change now, or consequences that happened that I wish I'd avoided. But that's past. It's kind of like 2022. It's pretty much over, and there's nothing to be done about it other than to actually change, to do the hard work, to see things as they really are, to be self-critical, not in a negative, self-flagellation kind of way, sackcloth and ashes. No, that's not what I mean. But to look at yourself, take a long, hard look and say, well, there's lots of good things. What would I change? When we're introducing in art lessons the idea of criticising works within the group, we had a convenient little rule, which was you had to give 3 good comments and 1 positive criticism. I mean, that might be a way about it. Thinking about New Year's resolutions, think back on the year, write down 3 things that you're delighted about or grateful for, and then write down 1 thing that perhaps needs a bit of readjustment. Just keep on repeating that process. Yeah, an interesting way to go about a review, a sense of balance. And 3 or 4 good things sort of fits in with the learning sweet spot of deliberate practice. Apparently in deliberate practice, if you're doing kind of exercises, one theory suggests that the best learning happens at about an 80% success rate. So it's still challenging, you're still making errors, but you're having more successes than failures. I think life reviews could work just the same. And I think drinking sort of could work just the same. You know, if you look back on a month, if you've had one weekend where things got a little bit more out of hand than you would have liked, and 3 or 4 where things stayed sensibly within nice sorts of limits, well, that's okay. When it starts becoming a habit, and when you stop actually seeking to make improvements that can be made, or you stop trying to compensate for things that can't. I had a feeling, and I know this growing up in South Africa, there was a little spell in primary school when I was a big lad. I got to senior school, I was the 8th tallest boy in our cohort, sort of 8 out of 120 more or less. By the time we left school, I was the 8th shortest. And so I had a feeling that wouldn't it be nice if I was taller? And nothing I can do about it. I mean, it's not that ship had sailed, it was predetermined and over. Live with who you are. And I think a lot of what we're worried about, if we just accept this is who we are, well, it's fine. You're probably quite okay just as you are. I certainly think I was. And I discovered later on that the answers to many of my insecurities, well, they were all inside. Other people didn't see me that way at all. They were all projections, and drink certainly didn't solve them. Certainly in terms of making friends. No, it doesn't make it easier to make friends. It makes it harder. It makes it easy to make the wrong friends, perhaps. But it certainly doesn't make it easier to build long-standing relationships. Now, I'm not saying that we all have to be good little boys and girls. Yeah, I'm not saying that. And if tonight you have a great evening, have a fantastic time, go wild, eat a bit too much, drink and be merry, maybe you act a little silly, that's fine. And if you have a wonderful time and the next day you wake up and think, what a fantastic evening, you start laughing about the conversations and the time you spent with your friends, that's wonderful. If you wake up and you really cannot remember where you were, who you're with, what you were doing, it doesn't make you a bad person, but it also doesn't make for an evening well spent. Perhaps the best piece of advice there is knowing when to pull the plug and call it quits. So that's it. Have a fantastic evening. Have a great celebration. I wish you all the very best for 2023. I trust that your lives will be filled with joy, prosperity, health, exciting new challenges and all the rest. And although it's a bit overcast, it's still very warm here in Brazil. I trust things are treating you well too, wherever you might be. And until next week and the next video,